Hello and welcome to another edition of Son of Kaiju Review. I'm Protomet.
I'm Tank.
And today we'll be taking a look at H.G. Wells' The Food of the Gods.
The Food of the Gods.
Which is based on a portion of H.G. Wells' story of the same name, as the credits indicate. I don't know how much of the story. The film just credits it as a portion of it. So maybe there was more to it that we just didn't get to read.
We saw footage. We didn't read nothing.
I don't know. Could have been slapped on as just on-screen text.
Yeah, it could have been. I guess I wasn't paying too much attention before the...
I mean, it wasn't, but it could have been.
Yeah.
The film begins when a professional football player named Morgan and his friends Brian and some other guy, who is also a football player, go to an island for a hunting trip. And one of them gets stung to death by giant wasps.
Yeah.
And the effects of the wasps is kind of crap.
Yeah.
It kind of looked like somebody was just filming through a piece of paper, so all we really get of the wasps throughout the film are just their shadows.
Yeah, pretty
just
much.
Kind of badly superimposed over the rest of the action. You could definitely see through them in quite a few scenes. But it's not really the wasps that are the main focus of this movie, which thank Primus for that.
That's a completely different movie.
But anyway, after Morgan and Brian find their friend extremely puffy and
dead.
Well, not quite. He needs medical attention. So Morgan goes to a nearby farm and meets Mrs. Skinner, who doesn't have a phone, but she certainly has some giant chickens.
Yep, she sure does.
One of which attacks Morgan when he goes into the barn, trying to look for help.
Yep, and Morgan ends up killing the chicken, and then sees Mrs. Skinner in the window, tries to talk to her through the window, but she doesn't. She finally opens the door, and then they talk some more.
She basically explains that the reason the chickens are so big is because there's this like stuff coming up out of the ground and on her land, and she mixed it in with the feed for the chickens, and
they just got really big.
They got big. Although it should be noted that she does at one point mention that it only affected younger chickens. It didn't have any effect on chickens that were already adult age. Which indicates that...
so human-sized chickens?
Well, yeah. They grew up when they were chicks.
Yep.
So that means that it's like the younger generation that are affected by it. But since she doesn't have a phone, Morgan and Brian are forced to return to the mainland via ferry in order to...
Well, their friend has pretty much passed.
Yeah, there's nothing they can do. By the time they would have even Morgan realized that by the time they would have gotten to the ferry to call for somebody, their friend would have been dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he was puffy.
He was puffy, but they go back to mostly their normal lives for a bit. Meanwhile, Mrs. Skinner is waiting for her husband to come back because... Mr. Skinner. That's all he's called.
And we're not talking about the guy from The Simpsons.
No. But anyway, he had gone out to get in touch with somebody about potentially monetizing this miraculous discovery, which she refers to as the food of the gods.
Yeah.
Because they view it, this stuff coming up out of the ground, as a gift from the gods.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how, let's see. I'm trying to... That's how Jack Bensington and his assistant Lorna come into the picture, as they wind up come to the island to investigate the food of the gods, and they are too late to meet Mr. Skinner, who, unbeknownst to Mrs. Skinner, was killed by rats.
Yep.
Killed by huge rats, who are the real stars of this movie. I mean, granted, you could definitely tell that these are like just regular rats filmed in.
Yeah, just they're on models and other things, but models or toys or something.
The effects look a lot better than what they did with the wasps.
Yes. Because they were actually the animal.
But anyway, Morgan and Brian also end up returning to the island to hunt the wasps that killed their friend. Because as far as they're aware, it's really
it's just the wasps and then chicken.
I mean, they probably have an idea that maybe there's more to it than just those, but for right now, they're just going to deal with the wasp problem. Now, before Jack and Lorna arrive, Mrs. Skinner gets attacked by giant maggots.
Yep, those are maggots. She just literally reaches her arms in, and all of a sudden she gets bit, and then the camera kind of zooms in, and she's got 3 maggots just on her forearm.
This movie is pretty bloody, which is weird when you consider that it actually got a PG rating. Like... But now bear in mind, this was the pre-PG-13 era.
Yeah.
This was before Temple of Doom. If this had been post-Temple of Doom, I would guarantee that this would have gotten a PG-13 for how bloody this movie is.
Poltergeist was PG.
Oh, wow. That's saying something. I have to assume that the MPAA was like, hey, we're getting a lot of complaints from parents taking their kids to these PG movies and getting the shit scared out of them.
Yep, that was before the PG-13 and R, then higher up.
I'm not sure if R had come into existence yet. Maybe it was still around the time that X was still the R equivalent. Mm-hmm. But
then, if it goes too far from over an R, it would be the NC-17. But those are rarely ever made anymore.
And it's not really relevant to this movie.
No. But, just you saying something like this was PG, and I could see somewhat, but with all the blood, then that just made me bring up Poltergeist was PG.
But anyway, by the time Jack and Lorna arrive, she has managed to kill the worms, and those two get a good look at the creatures.
Oh, yeah. Then I believe Morgan and Brian showed back up, and
they end up encountering Thomas and Rita, a couple who are just on the island.
I believe they were camping because they had an RV, but she is pregnant.
Yeah, Rita is pregnant with a child. And
they asked if they could they wanted a ride to town. Actually, they get kind of not put into the ditch, but I believe part of their RV is in the ditch.
I think they get chased into the ditch by the giant rat.
Yeah. We don't really see it.
I think it happens off screen, but Morgan does offer to help pull the RV out, but Tom is like, nah, the axle's broke, so we're just gonna stay in our RV and try and keep safe. You guys go on ahead. Thanks for the offer for a ride, but we'll hopefully be fine. Now, by the time Morgan and Brian arrive at the Skinner's farm, Bensington is under attack by wasps.
Yep. They ended up Mr. Jack. So they pull one of them off and just shoot it.
They pull out their shotguns and just start shooting at the things.
It's just fun. That scene's funny to me, just because the bad visual of the wasp.
I know.
And then all of a sudden they see a few of them falling and just like.
Or I think they kind of burst in the air or something.
Like a small, tiny explosion.
We do get a couple practical effects for the dead wasps.
Yeah. In
the same way we got practical effects for the giant worms, which they still look fairly fake, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's decent effects for the time. The rats are really the stars of this movie, though. So
when it has to be the puppet, it actually looks pretty.
Yeah, they do use rat puppetry later in the food. Mostly for shots of characters being attacked. But
yeah, that's pretty much it.
So it's scenes where having the real rats being superimposed just would not look at all good.
It's kind of like Night of the Lupus with the bunnies.
Lepus.
Lepus.
Which we have covered before.
Yes. Give that a listen. One more. Apologies, I am struggling with a cold.
But yeah, Morgan and Brian get to work on dealing with the wasp nest once they find it.
Yeah, they find that thing is giant. Normal wasp nest could get about that big, and that's just a gigantic hive. So they pretty much set it on fire.
Mm-hmm. And blew it up.
Yeah, they blew it up. Then they return back to the Skinner's farm. Then I believe it's Mrs. Skinner that shows Jack the. No, it's she shows Martin.
Morgan,
where
the wellspring of the food of the gods.
He's like, well, that's. He's pretty much against it all, but you know.
I mean, they've already had to deal with giant wasps and giant rats. So so this is probably not something we want to be dealing with any more than we have to.
So Brian and
Morgan.
Why am I having such a hard time remembering the name Morgan?
I don't know. I mean, I can understand why you would remember the name Brian, but that's besides the point.
I know. Yeah, so they go out trying to go, but then to investigate some other jargon.
I think Lorna falls into the rat holes.
Yeah.
On the property, and Morgan goes down to try and get her out, but something happens, and I think the gun he was using to support the rope broke or something.
Yeah. So they all kind of fall in, and then they find their way back out, but there's rats that they gotta shoot.
Yeah, Brian thankfully finds another entrance into the place and manages to save Morgan and Lorna in the nick of time, and they manage to get out. Now, Jack is basically spending the rest of his time at this point just trying to
scoop up the food of the gods.
Because I think the thing is starting to stop burbling up.
Yeah.
So he's trying
it's running out pretty much.
He's trying to collect as much as he can to take back to the mainland to, like
get a profit of some sort on it.
He rationalizes it by the ethos of trying to end world hunger, but really he's just wanting to get paid.
Yep.
He just wants to make money off of this. And Lorna's like, "You're dumb."
Yeah. He's like, so how are we gonna feed these giant things? Giant vegetables to feed the giant animals.
But at some point, Tom and Rita rejoin the rest.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just kind of there for a good chunk of the movie while Rita is
going through labor pains.
Yep. At one point, Morgan just gets so fed up with Jack that he just starts taking all the jars that he's put all this stuff in and just starts smashing them on the ground.
No, hey, no, what are you doing? No. Yeah, he sees him carrying a bunch of stuff, and he notices that the back of his car is just filled with stuff.
That's actually a bit later in the movie, but it is a fun moment a great moment in the scene. But that was actually motivated by the fact that Morgan and Brian go out to try and find a way to deal with the rats. At one point, they try electrifying a fence that's on the island, and that does at least work to deter the rats.
Yes.
And
they make an electrified fence with that is partially in flooded area. So they're also making the water electrified. So
Morgan's reasoning is that now that these creatures are so big, perhaps they've lost the ability to swim. Because rats are good swimmers, but these are huge rats.
Yep.
Maybe they don't have are as adept at swimming because of the size change.
Mm-hmm. So, at another point in the movie where Morgan and Brian are kind of driving back, trying to get back to the Skinner farm, and then, like, Morgan just randomly stops because there's like a tree down or something, or it's on top of something.
It's blocking them from exploring a different part of the island. I think it might be blocking the path to the ferry. So it basically is forcing them to have to return to the Skinner farm.
So during this time, a bunch of the rats come and start attacking the both of them, and they end up killing Brian.
I'm so sorry for your loss. You were taking from us too soon. And this is when Morgan returns to find Penzington loading all the stuff into his trunk. Yep. And just decides to smash the whole stuff.
Like, no, wait, what are you doing? No.
And then the rats show up.
Yep.
To basically raid the farm.
Then somehow they make the property flood.
Basically, Morgan takes a lot of the shotgun shells and drains them of the gunpowder in them.
He does a burnt gum.
He basically makes pipe bombs to blow up the dam in order to flood the property and drown the rats. Because I think he does find out that, yes, the rats can't swim because of their increased size.
So they're shooting a bunch of rats. Mrs. Skinner, I believe, gets eaten.
Yeah, they do manage to save Rita and the baby, and Lorna's there.
Yep.
The whole property gets flooded. The rats drown.
They drown. Some of them drown. Some climb up on the roof of the house because the water's so high. Then one white rat just ends up showing up and...
I assume that's the queen rat, considering it's like the one that the others kind of crowd around at later points. Also, I really hope that they use like paintballs when they're doing the scenes where they're shooting the rats. Because... The rats get red all over them, and clearly something's being shot at them. I just hope that it wasn't actually harming the rats.
Yeah.
Like I'm hoping it was like mini paintballs or something. Because I feel bad for the rats if it was something other than paintballs. I mean, even with paintballs.
Yeah, that would have still hurt.
Yeah.
So, pretty much, the queen rat starts coming, and Morgan tries to shoot it, but, he's finally officially out of ammo, so he just starts whacking the gun at its head.
And that does eventually do it in.
Yep.
And with all that done, they leave the island, and in like a pre-credit sequence, it's revealed that one of the jars got washed away and wound up finding itself on a lakeside near a riverside near some grazing cattle, who then presumably eat the stuff. Although if you look, the one cow that they get to actually go towards the stuff immediately turns away.
Then they see the cows getting milked, and then there's like
a bunch of kids in elementary school getting milk, and one of them's drinking it, and then the movie ends on a still shot of that kid drinking milk, with the implication that he probably grew into a giant, which is probably how the second movie got started.
Good possibility. We have watched a second movie, but we haven't.
The second movie is weirder than this movie, but this was a decent movie.
Oh yeah.
The superimposition effects for the rats are handled well. The models are decently done. It's just the superimposition of the other creatures
and the water.
Oh, the water in the flood. Oh, that looked a lot less like flooding water and more like the old Windows Media Player ambience effect.
Pretty much. That's what he's like yesterday when we were watching it, oh my god, that water looks so fake.
It's like, and then I made the comparison, you're like, you're right!
Yeah. He's like, I don't see no flaw in his logic at this point in time.
But otherwise, a pretty good movie.
Yeah. Like, I swear, it gives me Night of the Lepus vibes. But also, I probably said that about Night of the Lepus, getting Food of the God vibes.
They are very similar movies, although one's from a mysterious substance that just shows up, whereas another is the result of genetic experiments. Mm-hmm. So
we're trying to make the boy bunny into a girl bunny. That's a line in the movie.
I did not recall that, but I'll take your word for it, because your memory is probably better than mine.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Who are you?
I'm pretty sure I'm Tank.
So
right?
So I'm probably.
Bye?
Bye?